The price of peace. The human body breaks easier than you think. One moment, Janet Miller was standing in her own kitchen, the kitchen where she'd made 37 years of breakfasts, packed thousands of school lunches, cleaned up after holiday dinners that seated 14 people. The next moment, she was on the floor, pain exploding through her right side like white lightning, unable to breathe. Her son Marcus stood over her, his face twisted into something she didn't recognize. His hand was still extended from the push, fingers spread wide, trembling. "Mom!" His voice cracked. "Mom, I didn't mean..." But he had meant it. That was the truth that cut deeper than the two fractured ribs pressing against her lung. He had meant it. 6 weeks earlier. The real estate agent's voice had that careful, practiced gentleness people use when they think you're fragile. "Mrs. Miller, this is an excellent offer, really excellent. In this market, with agricultural land values dropping, $180,000 is more than fair for 70 acres in the farmhouse." Janet sat in the office that smelled of carpet cleaner and ambition, holding the purchase agreement like it might disintegrate. Through the window, she could see Main Street, the hardware store where Thomas had bought fence posts every spring, the diner where they'd had coffee every Sunday after church. "The buyers are willing to close in 30 days, the agent continued. Her name was Ashley or Amber, something young and smooth. Cash sale, no contingencies. Janet's hands didn't shake as she signed. She'd made harder decisions than this. She'd held Thomas's hand while cancer ate him from the inside out. She'd watched the hospice nurse adjust his morphine drip for the last time. She'd selected his casket, approved the funeral program, received condolences from 300 people who all said the same useless things. Signing away 70 acres of mud and memory, that was easy. "My children don't know yet," Janet heard herself say. The agent's smile flickered. "Oh, well, it's your property, Mrs. Miller. Your name is the only one on the deed. Your name. Singular. After Thomas died, after the lawyers and the life insurance and the settling of affairs, that had been the strangest part. Everything suddenly singular. Your house. Your decision. Your life. Your loneliness. They'll understand," Janet said, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. The call. Marcus called 3 days after the closing. Janet was sorting through Thomas's tools in the barn, trying to decide what to keep, what to sell, what to let rust into the earth that had claimed so much of their lives already. "Mom, I heard something crazy." His voice had that edge it got when he was trying to sound casual about something that infuriated him. "Melissa Connor said you sold the farm. That's not true, right?" Janet set down the wrench she was holding. "It's true." Silence. Then, "What the fuck, Mom?" She'd raised him not to use that language with her, but then she'd raised him to be a lot of things he wasn't. "Watch your mouth, Marcus. You sold the farm. Dad's farm. Our farm. Without even telling us?" "It was my farm," Janet said quietly. "Thomas left it to me. Because he thought you'd be responsible with it. He thought you'd take care of it, keep it in the family. He thought I'd do what was best for me, and I did." Another silence. This one uglier. "We need to talk about this. In person. I'm coming over tomorrow." Marcus. But he had already hung up. The weight of everything. That night, Janet couldn't sleep. She lay in the bed she'd shared with Thomas for 37 years, in the house that was already sold, already someone else's future, and tried to remember when it had all gotten so heavy. The farm had been Thomas's dream, not hers. She'd been 19 when they married, 20 when Marcus was born, 22 when Brielle came along. The farm had been a living thing that demanded everything. Early mornings and late nights, holidays canceled for harvest, vacations that never happened because the cows didn't care about your beach plans. She'd loved Thomas, loved him with the kind of deep, quiet devotion that doesn't make good stories, but makes good marriages. She'd loved their children with the fierce, complicated love that motherhood demands. But the farm? The farm had been a bargain she'd never agreed to, a life sentence she'd served with as much grace as she could manage. And she was tired. God, she was so tired. The $18,000 sat in her bank account like a promise. Not a fortune, not in 2025, not anywhere, but enough. Enough to buy a small condo in town. Enough to travel a little, maybe see the ocean Thomas had always been too busy to visit. Enough to have a life that didn't smell like diesel fuel and cow shit and broken dreams. Enough to be singular again. Not a mother, not a widow, not a farmer's wife. Just Janet. The reckoning. Marcus arrived at 10 in the morning with Brielle in tow. Janet had made coffee, set out Thomas's favorite mugs, the ones with the John Deere logo that Marcus had given him for Father's Day 15 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on her. Mom. Marcus didn't sit down. He stood in the kitchen, her kitchen, like he owned it. At 37, he looked so much like Thomas it hurt. Same broad shoulders, same stubborn jaw, same way of standing with his feet planted like he was ready to fight gravity itself. But Thomas had been gentle. Thomas had been kind. "We need to talk about the money," Marcus said. "There's nothing to talk about." Janet poured coffee she didn't want. "The sale is final. The money is mine." Brielle finally spoke. At 35, she'd inherited Janet's small frame and sharp eyes, but none of her patience. "Mom, that's not fair. That farm was Dad's legacy. It's family money." "It's my money. The farm was in my name. Thomas and I discussed this before he died." "Bullshit." Marcus's voice was loud now, filling the kitchen the way his father's never had. "Dad would never have wanted you to sell. He built that farm from nothing. He's dead, Marcus." The words came out harder than Janet intended. "He's dead, and I'm not. And I am entitled to live whatever life I have left without asking permission from either of you." "We're not asking for all of it." Brielle's voice had that wheedling quality that had worked when she was 7 and wanted a pony. It didn't work now. "Just, you could split it. 60,000 each. That's fair. You don't need $180,000. You don't have expensive taste. You could live comfortably on $60,000, and Marcus and I could actually what?" Janet set down her mug too hard. Coffee slopped onto the counter. "Pay off your credit cards? Put a down payment on that boat you've been wanting? Bail out that restaurant that's failing because you don't know the first thing about running a business?" Marcus's face went red. "That restaurant would work if I had proper capital, if I had investors who believed in me." "I'm not an investor, Marcus. I'm your mother, and my belief in you doesn't come with a price tag." "So that's it?" Brielle's voice broke. "You're just going to keep all of it? After everything we gave up?" "What did you give up? I'm genuinely asking. What did you give up? We grew up on that farm." Marcus's hands were fists now. "We worked that farm. You worked that farm for 4 summers when you were teenagers, and you complained every single day. You couldn't wait to leave. Both of you went to college and never looked back, never called to see if we needed help, never visited except for holidays, never asked how your father was doing, if the harvest was good, if we were managing. We had our own lives." "Exactly. You had your own lives, and now I'm going to have mine." The kitchen fell silent, except for the tick of the old clock on the wall, the one Thomas's mother had given them as a wedding present, the one that had counted off every minute of every argument, every joy, every ordinary Tuesday of their marriage. Brielle was crying now, mascara running in black tracks down her face. "I can't believe you're being this selfish!" The word hit Janet like a physical thing. Selfish. She'd given 37 years to this place. She'd given her youth, her energy, her dreams of art school in Chicago that she'd never mentioned to anyone because what was the point? She'd given her body. 2 children born in the upstairs bedroom because the harvest couldn't wait and Thomas couldn't leave. 2 C-section scars, varicose veins from standing on concrete floors, processing vegetables for the farmer's market. Hands twisted from arthritis earned pulling weeds and hauling feed. She'd given her sanity. The year the drought killed the corn crop and they didn't know if they'd lose everything. The year Thomas's father died and they had to take over his debt. The year Marcus got expelled from school for fighting and they had to pay for private counseling they couldn't afford. She'd given her husband, watched him work himself literally to death, refused to slow down even when the cancer diagnosis came because the farm needs me, died at 63 years old, worn out and used up, and convinced until his last breath that he'd left her something valuable. And now her daughter was calling her selfish? Get out, Janet said quietly. Mom, get out of my house. Marcus steps forward instead. No, we're not leaving until you agree to do the right thing. That money belongs to all of us. It belongs to me. The law says it belongs to me. Thomas's will says it belongs to me. And every debt I paid and every meal I cooked and every night I slept alone while your father was in the barn says it belongs to me. Her voice was rising now, years of quiet breaking open. You want to talk about what's fair? Fair would be you understanding that I am 61 years old and I have never, not once in my entire adult life, had the freedom to make a choice just for myself. Fair would be you being happy that your mother can finally breathe. Fair would be you saying, "Congratulations, Mom, you survived. Here is your life back." He was my father, and he was my husband. I lost him too. But apparently, my grief doesn't count because I'm supposed to be the strong one. I'm supposed to hold everything together. I'm supposed to sacrifice and smile and be grateful that you even bothered to show up twice a year. That's not fair. Nothing about any of this is fair. Janet was shouting now too. Something wild and desperate breaking free. Your father died and left me with a farm I never wanted, a mortgage I can barely pay, and 2 children who only call when they need something. So yes, I sold it. I sold it and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to live somewhere I can sleep through the night without worrying about equipment breaking down or property taxes or whether the well is going to run dry. I'm going to wake up in the morning and the only thing I'm going to have to worry about is what I want for breakfast. And if that makes me selfish, then I guess I'm fucking selfish. The profanity hung in the air like smoke. Janet had never cursed in front of her children before. She'd never cursed in this house. Thomas hadn't approved. But Thomas was dead. The breaking point. So that's your answer. Marcus's voice had gone cold. You're going to keep all of it? Yes. Even though Brielle and I are struggling? Everyone is struggling, Marcus. Welcome to being an adult. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs because of that restaurant that you opened against my advice. And Brielle is about to lose her condo because she bought something she couldn't afford. And you're just going to sit on $180,000 while your children drown? Janet looked at her son, really looked at him, saw the entitlement written in every line of his body. The expectation that the world owed him something just for existing, saw her failure as a parent reflected back at her. I can't save you, she said quietly. I can't keep saving you. You're 37 years old, Marcus. Brielle is 35. You are grown adults who made your own choices. Bad choices, apparently, but yours. I can't believe this. Marcus's hands were shaking now. I can't fucking believe you. Believe it. The money is mine, and I'm keeping it. And if you can't accept that, then maybe you shouldn't come around anymore. That's when everything changed. Marcus's face contorted, rage and disbelief, and something uglier, something entitled and mean. You selfish bitch. Marcus, Brielle gasped. But he wasn't done. He stepped closer, crowding into Janet's space. Dad would be ashamed of you. Do you know that? He'd be fucking disgusted. Don't you dare. He worked himself to death to leave you something, and you're just going to piss it away on some midlife crisis fantasy? Get away from me. You owe us. You owe us that money. We're your children. I don't owe you a goddamn thing. And that's when Marcus pushed her. The fall. Later, Janet would remember the moment in fragments. Marcus's hand on her shoulder, the pressure, sudden and hard, the world tilting, her hip catching the corner of the counter, the same counter where she'd rolled out 10,000 pie crusts, cut countless sandwiches, folded laundry while dinner simmered, the floor rushing up, the crack of her ribs, audible, unmistakable, a sound like green wood breaking. The pain, oh God, the pain, like being stabbed from the inside out, like drowning in broken glass. Brielle screaming, Marcus saying, shit, 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 over and over. Janet trying to breathe and discovering that breathing was a luxury she'd taken for granted for 61 years. Then darkness creeping in at the edges, pain and shock dragging her under. The last thing she heard before she passed out was Marcus saying, "Don't call 911, we can handle this ourselves." But Brielle, to her credit, already had her phone out. The hospital. Janet woke up in the emergency room with an oxygen mask on her face, and a young doctor with kind eyes explaining that she'd fractured 2 ribs on her right side. "You're lucky," he said. "A few inches over and you could have punctured a lung. Any trouble breathing, you come right back. The ribs will heal in 6 to 8 weeks, but they're going to hurt like hell." "My son," Janet said through the mask. "Where?" "The police are talking to him now." Police. The words settled over her like a weight. The officer who came to take her statement was a woman in her 40s with a wedding ring and tired eyes. She sat in the chair beside Janet's bed and spoke in that same careful, gentle voice the real estate agent had used. "Mrs. Miller, I need to ask you some questions about what happened. Your daughter-in-law called 911 and said there was a domestic incident." "Daughter," Janet corrected, "not daughter-in-law. Brielle is my daughter." "I apologize. Your daughter said your son pushed you during an argument. Is that correct?" "Was it correct?" "Yes." "Was it the whole truth?" "No." "The whole truth was that she'd raised a man who thought his mother's money was his right. The whole truth was that she'd spent 37 years being small and quiet and accommodating, and her children had learned that mom would always bend, always break, always give in eventually. The whole truth was that she'd fallen a long time ago, and this was just the moment it became visible." "Yes," Janet said. "That's correct. Do you want to press charges? Did she?" Marcus was sitting in another room somewhere, probably terrified. He'd hurt her, but he was still her son. Still the boy she'd rocked through nightmares, taught to ride a bike, sent off to college with careful instructions to call every Sunday. But that boy was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. Maybe she'd just loved the idea of him so hard that she'd made him real in her mind, ignored the evidence accumulating over 37 years that Marcus thought the world should rearrange itself to suit him. "Yes," Janet said again. "I want to press charges." The officer nodded and wrote something in her notebook. "He'll likely be charged with assault. Given that you're his mother and you sustained injuries, the district attorney might pursue this pretty aggressively. Are you prepared for that?" "No," Janet said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." The aftermath. They kept her overnight for observation. The hospital room was quiet in a way the farmhouse had never been. No animals demanding attention, no equipment breaking down, no phone ringing with disasters that needed immediate attention. Just Janet and the morphine drip and the steady beep of monitors measuring her continued existence. Brielle came to visit at 8 p.m. She stood in a doorway like she was afraid to enter, mascara still smudged, eyes red. "Mom, you can come in." Brielle sat in the chair the police officer had occupied and didn't squeak for a long moment. "They arrested Marcus," she finally said. "They took him to county lockup. He has to stay there until his arraignment tomorrow." "I know." "Mom, he didn't mean to hurt you. He was just upset." "Stop." Janet's voice was firm despite the pain in her ribs. "He pushed me, Brielle. He hurt me. On purpose. Because I wouldn't give him money. He's under a lot of pressure. So is everyone. That's not an excuse to hurt people." Brielle's face crumpled. What am I supposed to do? He's my brother. You're my mother. I'm supposed to choose? You're supposed to understand that what he did was wrong. You're supposed to be horrified, not making excuses. I am horrified. Brielle's voice broke. I'm terrified. But he's falling apart, Mom. The restaurant is failing. His marriage is a mess. He's been drinking too much. None of that is my fault. None of that is my responsibility to fix. But you could help. You have the money. Brielle. Janet reached out with her good arm and took her daughter's hand. Listen to me. Really listen. If I give Marcus money, it won't fix his restaurant. It won't fix his marriage. It won't fix whatever is broken inside him that made him think it was okay to hurt me. All it will do is teach him that violence works, that if he threatens and intimidates, he'll eventually get what he wants. He needs help. Yes, professional help. Therapy. Maybe rehab if he's drinking, but not my money. Brielle pulled her hand away. I can't believe you're being so cold about this. I'm not being cold. I'm being clear. There's a difference. He's your son. And I'm his mother. And mothers are people too. We have limits. We can be hurt. We can say no. Brielle stood up, her face hard. If you press charges, you'll destroy his life. He destroyed this relationship the moment he put his hands on me. So that's it? You're just done with him? I don't know what I am yet, Janet admitted. But I know what I'm not. I'm not a bank. I'm not a punching bag. I'm not a problem solver for grown adults who refuse to solve their own problems. Brielle walked to the door, then stopped. Dad would be so disappointed in you. The words were meant to wound, and they did. But Janet had learned something in the last 6 hours, lying on this hospital bed with broken ribs and broken dreams. She'd learned that she could survive being wounded. Maybe, Janet said quietly. Or maybe he'd be proud that I finally learned to stand up for myself. Brielle left without saying goodbye. The trial. The arraignment happened on a Tuesday. Marcus pleaded not guilty, was released on bail, and his lawyer requested a trial date. The trial happened 3 months later. By then, Janet's ribs had healed. She'd closed on her condo, a small 2-bedroom in town with a view of the park and no land that needed tending. She'd bought new furniture, donated most of Thomas's things, kept only what made her smile. She'd also started therapy. Dr. Patterson was younger than Janet expected, mid-40s, with gray already streaking her dark hair and a directness that Janet appreciated. Tell me why you're here, Dr. Patterson had said in their first session. Because my son assaulted me and I don't know how to feel about it. How do you feel about it? Angry, guilty, relieved, heartbroken, afraid, free. Those are a lot of contradictions. I'm a lot of contradictions right now. Good. Contradictions mean you're honest. Let's work with that. The work was hard. Harder than farming, harder than watching Thomas die, harder than anything Janet had ever done. It meant looking at 37 years of her life and asking questions she'd never dared ask. Had she enabled Marcus? Yes. Had she taught her children that her needs didn't matter? Yes. Had she sacrificed herself so completely that she'd lost track of who she was? Yes. Could she forgive herself for that? She was working on it. Could she forgive Marcus? She didn't know yet. On the day of the trial, Janet wore a blue dress and her mother's pearls. She sat in the witness box and told the truth. The whole truth this time. How Marcus had demanded money. How he'd become aggressive. How he'd pushed her. How she'd fallen. How she'd broken. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint her as vindictive, as a mother using the legal system to punish her son for not agreeing with her financial decisions. He used words like family dispute and unfortunate accident and misunderstanding. But the prosecution had the 911 call, had the hospital records, had Brielle's statement, reluctant but honest, that she'd seen Marcus push their mother deliberately. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. The sentencing. The judge gave Marcus 18 months of probation, a year of mandatory anger management, and a restraining order that prohibited him from contacting Janet. "Mr. Miller," the judge said, "you put your hands on your mother in anger. You injured her. That is unacceptable. I don't care what the argument was about. I don't care how much pressure you were under. You are a grown man, and you are responsible for your actions." Marcus stood there in his suit, the one Janet had bought him for his college graduation, and said nothing. Janet watched from the gallery and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not grief, just nothing. A clean, empty nothing that felt like possibility. 6 months later, Janet stood on the beach in Oregon, with her toes in the sand and the Pacific Ocean stretching out forever in front of her. She'd been traveling for 3 months. She'd seen the Grand Canyon, driven through Montana, spent a week in Seattle drinking coffee and visiting museums. She'd learned to eat dinner alone without feeling self-conscious. She'd learned to make decisions without consulting anyone. She'd learned to be singular. The $180,000 was dwindling. Travel and therapy in her new condo weren't cheap, but she earned every penny of it. Every single penny. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brielle. "Can we talk, please?" Janet looked at the message for a long time. She'd been getting similar messages for months now. Sometimes from Brielle, never from Marcus. Always the same plea. "Can we talk, please?" Maybe someday they could. Maybe someday Janet would be ready to let Brielle back in, to attempt some kind of relationship with boundaries and respect. But not today. Today, Janet wanted to watch the ocean. She wanted to feel the wind in her hair and the sand under her feet. She wanted to think about nothing more complicated than where she'd eat dinner tonight and whether she'd drive north or south tomorrow. She turned off her phone and walked down the beach. The ocean roared and crashed and paid no attention to her at all. It was perfect. If you're reading this and something in your chest is tight, if something in your throat is closed, if you're thinking about all the times you said yes when you meant no, all the times you gave when you had nothing left to give, all the times you made yourself small so someone else could be big, this is about you. You are entitled to peace. You are entitled to keep what's yours. You are entitled to say no to your children, your parents, your siblings, whoever demands that you sacrifice yourself on the altar of their convenience. Love is not martyrdom. Family is not servitude. And being a good mother does not mean being a doormat. Janet Miller is 62 years old now. She lives in a small condo with a view of the park. She takes painting classes on Tuesdays and volunteers at the library on Thursdays. She's learning to speak Spanish. She's thinking about getting a cat. She talks to Brielle once a month. It's awkward and careful, but it's something. Brielle is trying. That's worth acknowledging. She hasn't spoken to Marcus in 18 months. Maybe she never will again. That breaks her heart in a way that never quite heals, but it doesn't break her. She survived. More than that. She chose to survive on her own terms. The farm is someone else's problem now. Young couple with 3 kids and big dreams. Janet drove past it once. Saw the new paint on the barn, the playground equipment in the yard, the garden flourishing. It looked happy. It looked loved. It looked like someone else's life. Janet kept driving. She had an ocean to find.